let me talk. Speaking of cable news, there's a disgusting statistic about the coverage of the sequester and the automatic cuts that's been happening on cable news. This is out of Think Progress. I encourage you to take a look at all the data. Since the sequester, we've seen a lot of stories, thousands and thousands of stories about different cuts that are happening as a result of the sequester, of the automatic cuts. Mainstream media has been almost to a point of being almost like a fetish, obsessed with the cuts to White House tours. This is something that started circulating that, wow, well, listen, the White House tours are not going to be able to continue for the public. Kids, their classes, they're not going to be able to have a tour of the White House because of the sequester cuts. In fact, as Ari Melber of The Nation pointed out yesterday, there have been 12,000 news stories related to the White House tours and how the White House tours may not continue because of the sequester cuts, and less than 1,000 stories on cable news about the impact on housing assistance programs, which, of course, disproportionately affect low-income Americans, and all of the other social programs that are being cut. It's incredible. I'm not surprised, but when you look at the numbers, 12,000 versus less than 1,000, it's incredible. Now, Think Progress looked at three major cable networks, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, since March 6th. White House tours were mentioned 33 times as often as mentions of other sequester impacts hitting the poor. Any discussion of sequestration's steep cuts to housing assistance, food stamps, and Head Start early education was virtually non-existent on all three networks in the same time frame. Fox News mentioned Head Start 3 times. Education mentioned only 3 times. Ignored housing and food stamps altogether. MSNBC mentioned Head Start 4 times. Food stamps once. Did not cover the housing assistance cuts. CNN silent on all 3 issues. What do you guys make of this? I mean, we've seen so much backlash, and you know, people talk about, liberal media, conservative media, so on and so forth. Number one, the White House tour cuts have been a Republican-driven story, and the media has latched onto it to the tune of 12,000 stories, as we mentioned, 12,000 mentions. And remember, White House tours are something that, by and large, disproportionately affect not the poorest, right? It's true there are some poor school districts that raise money to go to the White House and have a tour. That's true. But mostly, if you're going to the White House to have a tour, you're able to travel to Washington. There's a number of other things. All of these other programs that aren't being mentioned are programs for poor people. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting.
Now, is this just an unfortunate consequence of these major networks picking stories that they think people want to hear about?
Natan, what do you think about that? It's a chicken egg scenario. What is the driver here? I believe that this is a story that was handpicked by Republicans. I started hearing this several weeks ago, Republicans saying, White House tours are being cut, blah, blah, blah. And then the media responded in a frenzy to that. But maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think we live in a culture where some organization with a specific political interest will put out a press release. It'll get repeated verbatim for all the media sources across the country, and then it'll just be reported as such without any change in the official line. I think that's what's happening here. Although I will say that I could come up with an argument to defend White House tours, which is that in contrast to all the other programs that get cut, except for maybe some of the defense cuts, a lot of tourists who come to the U.S. and want to go to the White House and they get shut out, they're going to go back home and say, oh my God, they treat tourists, foreign tourists, so badly. You go to the White House, they don't even give you a tour.
It's a perfectly fine argument to make, Natan, but the reality, Louis, is that the U.S. is doing so many other things that are of much more concern in terms of our image around the world than not giving people tours of the White House, that I can't say that is really that compelling of an argument.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest here. The Smithsonian is way more interesting. But yeah, I mean, overall, we just have, obviously, a continuing failure by the mainstream media to report on important issues.
Absolutely sickening.